Isabella Hart had built her empire brick by brick, or rather, dress by dress. As the youngest CEO in the luxury fashion industry, her name carried weight, respect, and a certain kind of loneliness that came with success. Every magazine called her the Ice Queen of Couture, but behind that flawless smile and power suits lived a woman who hadn't been held, truly held, in years. That evening, as she stood in front of the mirror in her penthouse suite, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her reflection was perfect. Sleek black gown hugging her curves, diamond earrings glinting under soft light, and makeup applied with precision. But her eyes, those betrayed her. There was longing there, a hint of fear, a spark of hope. Her best friend, Clarissa, had begged her for weeks to go on this blind date. Greater than, he's the heir to Anderson Holdings, Clarissa had said over the phone. Tall, brilliant, single, and from a family that matches your world. Trust me, Bella, you need this. Isabella had laughed then, a sharp, practiced sound. Greater than, Clarissa, I run a company. I don't have time for. Greater than, for happiness. Clarissa had interrupted. You deserve someone who doesn't see your power as a threat. That one sentence stuck with her. So, against all logic, Isabella agreed. By 7:30, she was sitting in the rooftop restaurant called The Terrace, where soft jazz floated through the air and the city glowed beneath. She'd booked a private table overlooking the skyline, waiting for the man who might just change her story. Minutes passed, then 30, then 40. She sipped her wine, trying not to look desperate. Maybe he wasn't coming. Maybe she was a fool for hoping. She almost reached for her purse to leave when the maitre d' appeared beside her. Greater than, Miss Hart, your guest has arrived. She looked up, and her heart stalled. The man walking toward her wasn't dressed like a billionaire heir. No tailored suit, no slick confidence. Instead, he wore a simple white shirt rolled at the sleeves, dark jeans, and shoes that had seen better days. His hair was slightly tousled, his stubble uneven, but his eyes, a warm hazel, carried the kind of sincerity money couldn't buy. He stopped at her table, smiling awkwardly. Greater than, hi, Miss Hart. Greater than, yes, she replied, unsure. And you must be, Mr. Anderson. He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. Greater than, yeah, Anderson. That's me. His tone was casual, unsure, but somehow charming. She raised a brow, her business instinct screaming that something was off. But before she could ask more, he gestured to the chair. Greater than, may I? Against her better judgment, Isabella nodded. From the first few minutes, the conversation went nothing like her previous blind dates. There were no polished lines, no fake smiles. Instead of talking about stocks or luxury vacations, this man spoke about his daughter, how she refused to eat broccoli, how she believed the stars were the universe's freckles. Greater than, you have a daughter? Isabella asked, surprised. Greater than, yeah, 6 years old, smartest little thing I've ever met. And the reason I don't give up, even when life gets, well, messy. She smiled despite herself. There was warmth in his voice, a love that felt raw and real. She found herself relaxing, leaning in. Greater than, and what do you do, Mr. Anderson? Greater than, I work with my hands, he said vaguely, eyes glancing away. Not the kind of job that fits in fancy rooms like this. Greater than, oh, she tilted her head, curious. And yet here you are. Greater than, lucky night, I guess, he said, grinning. They almost didn't let me in. Thought I was lost. For the first time in years, Isabella laughed, really laughed. The kind that made her shoulders shake. The kind she'd forgotten she was capable of. They talked for hours. She told him about her childhood, how her father taught her business instead of bedtime stories, how her mother's absence left a hole she filled with ambition. He listened without judgment, not trying to fix her, not intimidated by her success. When the waiter brought dessert, Ethan, though she still thought he was Anderson, pulled a small toy car from his pocket and placed it beside his plate. Greater than, my daughter made me promise to bring this. She said it's her lucky car. Isabella blinked, touched. Greater than, that's adorable. Greater than, yeah, he said softly. She said it'll bring me something special tonight. Guess she was right. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than they should have been. Her heart fluttered, unfamiliar with the feeling. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. Not over a man she just met. Not over a stranger. When it was time to leave, Isabella stood hesitantly. Greater than, well, Mr. Anderson, I didn't expect tonight to go this way. Greater than, is that a good thing or a bad thing? He teased gently. She smiled. Good. Very good. As he walked her to her car, the night breeze played with her hair. For a moment, she wanted to freeze time, to stay in this bubble where titles didn't matter, where her heart wasn't guarded by walls made of gold and fear. He reached out, hesitating, then tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. Greater than, you know, he said softly, for someone with the world at her feet, you look like you haven't been touched by it in a long time. Her breath caught. No one had ever seen her that clearly. Greater than, maybe I haven't, she whispered. Silence stretched, heavy with something unspoken. Then he stepped back, giving her space. Greater than, thank you for tonight, Isabella. I don't get many evenings like this. Greater than, you're welcome, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Maybe we could do it again. His eyes widened slightly, as if surprised that someone like her would ask someone like him. Greater than, yeah, he said finally, smiling that easy, honest smile. I'd like that, but, are you sure? Greater than, I am, she said, not knowing why, only that she meant it. When her car drove away, Ethan stood on the curb, still holding the toy car in his palm. He didn't know how long this accidental fairy tale could last. After all, he wasn't Mr. Anderson. He was Ethan Cole, a mechanic who'd been in the wrong place at the right time. And Isabella Hart, the woman who unknowingly changed his world, was driving away believing he was someone he wasn't. The morning after the date, Isabella woke up with a smile she couldn't hide. It had been years since she felt that light, like the world wasn't just deadlines, contracts, and polished masks. She replayed every moment of last night in her head, his shy smile, his gentle teasing, the way he looked at her as though she was more than just a name on a Forbes list. But as soon as she arrived at her glass-walled office in the heart of the city, reality came knocking, hard. Her assistant, Lily, rushed in with wide eyes, clutching her tablet like it carried a bomb. Greater than, Miss Hart. You're not going to believe this, Lily said, voice shaking. The man from last night, the one from your blind date, he's not who you think he is. Isabella frowned, confusion spreading like wildfire. Greater than, what are you talking about? Lily hesitated. There was a mix-up in the reservation. The real Mr. Anderson was seated at a different table. He waited for you downstairs. The man you had dinner with, his name is Ethan Cole. He's not an heir, not even close. He's a mechanic, a single father from Westfield. For a second, Isabella just stared, blank, expressionless. Then her heart twisted painfully. A mechanic, not a billionaire, not a business connection, not someone from her world. And yet, her mind betrayed her, flashing images of his smile, his laughter, the way he'd looked at her as if she were just Bella. Lily kept talking, words fading into background noise. Something about media risks, reputation, image. But Isabella couldn't hear any of it. All she could think was, he hadn't told her the truth. He'd let her believe a lie. By the time she left the office that evening, the warmth from last night had turned cold in her chest. But no matter how hard she tried to bury it, her heart whispered what her pride refused to accept. She missed him. For 3 days, she tried to forget. She went to meetings, smiled for cameras, signed deals worth millions, yet she couldn't stop thinking about a man with grease-stained hands who'd made her laugh like a teenager. Finally, on the 4th day, she gave in. She told her driver to take her to Westfield. When the car stopped in front of a small auto garage with a flickering sign, Cole's Repair and Service, she almost lost her nerve. The sound of metal clanging and faint music drifted out. Men in overalls worked on cars under dim lights. And there he was, Ethan, bent over an engine, his sleeves rolled up, sweat glistening on his neck. There was something heartbreakingly human about him, something raw and unpretentious that made her heart ache. When he looked up and saw her, his wrench froze midair. Greater than, Isabella, he said softly, disbelief flickering in his eyes. You came. Greater than, you lied, she said quietly, stepping closer. You let me believe you were someone else. He sighed, wiping his hands on a rag, guilt in his expression. Greater than, you assumed. I didn't plan it, Isabella. I was never supposed to be there. A friend sent me to that restaurant for a free dinner, said there was a reservation under, heart. I didn't know who you were until halfway through. Greater than, you should have told me, she whispered, voice trembling. You should have said something. Greater than, and what then? He asked gently. Would you have stayed? Would you have laughed the way you did if you knew I fix engines for a living? She opened her mouth, but no words came. Because deep down, she knew the answer. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of the garage. Then a small voice called out. Greater than, Daddy. A little girl, maybe 6, ran out from the office corner, her ponytail bouncing. She froze when she saw Isabella, her big brown eyes curious. In her hand was a tiny toy car, the same one Ethan had shown her that night. Greater than, that's my lucky car. The girl said proudly. Daddy said he met a princess that night. Isabella's throat tightened. She knelt, smiling gently. Greater than, a princess, huh? What did he tell you about her? The little girl grinned. Greater than, that she was really pretty, and that she made him laugh. Ethan's eyes met Isabella's, full of regret, longing, and something deeper. Greater than, her name's Lily, he murmured. She's my world. Greater than, she's beautiful, Isabella said softly, standing up. Greater than, she deserves the world, he replied, his voice breaking slightly. But I can't give her that. Not like you could. You belong up there, Isabella, in a world of glass towers and flashing cameras. I belong here, under a car hood. Greater than, don't tell me where I belong, she whispered fiercely. You don't get to decide that. He took a shaky breath, stepping closer. Greater than, you don't understand what you're risking. If people find out you're with someone like me, they'll tear you apart. They'll say you've lost your mind. Greater than, let them talk, she said, eyes glistening. They've been talking all my life. About my clothes, my company, my success. But for once, I want to choose something for me. Ethan looked at her like he was trying to memorize her face. Then he shook his head. Greater than, you're too good for this. Greater than, and you're too scared to believe you're enough. Her voice cracked as tears welled up. She turned, ready to leave, but felt a tiny tug at her hand. Little Lily was holding her fingers gently, looking up with innocent eyes. Greater than, don't go, the girl whispered. Daddy smiles when you're here. That one sentence broke Isabella completely. She stayed. For hours, they talked. Not about business or class or money, but about life. About loss, hope, and the quiet ways love can heal broken people. Ethan told her about his wife, how she died when Lily was a baby. How he'd spent years thinking love was something he didn't deserve anymore. Isabella told him about her loneliness, how the higher she climbed, the emptier the world felt. When she finally left that night, something inside both of them had changed. In the weeks that followed, they kept seeing each other, quietly, carefully. Coffee at his garage, walks in the park with Lily, late-night calls that lasted until dawn. Isabella found herself laughing more, worrying less. Ethan found himself daring to dream again. But their secret didn't stay hidden for long. One morning, the tabloids exploded with headlines. Luxury CEO Isabella heart spotted with unknown mechanic, secret affair. The press went wild. Her board members panicked. Investors threatened to pull deals. And yet, through it all, Isabella stood her ground. At a press conference, cameras flashing, she took a deep breath and spoke with steady grace. Greater than, I built my life on ambition and hard work. But lately, I've learned that success means nothing without love, compassion, and truth. I'm not ashamed of who I spend my time with. The man I'm seeing is honest, kind, and hardworking, qualities this world needs more of. The room went silent. Ethan watched the broadcast from his garage, eyes wet. A week later, Isabella returned, this time not in heels or suits, but in jeans and a white shirt, hair tied back. She walked straight up to him and smiled. Greater than, you told me once I belonged up there, she said softly. But the truth is, I belong wherever you are. He didn't speak. He just pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something fragile, precious, and real. Months passed. The noise of the scandal faded. The world moved on. But for them, life had just begun. Ethan's garage grew, with Isabella's quiet investment and her business skills. Together, they opened a new venture, the Heart and Coal Foundation, a charity that offered free education and job training to single parents and low-income families. At the launch ceremony, cameras clicked, lights flashed, but Isabella wasn't nervous. She looked radiant, standing beside Ethan and Lily. When it was her turn to speak, her voice trembled slightly. Greater than, life doesn't always give us what we expect. Sometimes, it gives us something better, a second chance, hidden in a mix-up. The crowd clapped. Ethan's eyes shone with pride. After the event, as the sunset painted the sky gold, Isabella leaned close and whispered, "Greater than, you were right, Ethan. That night was a mistake." He smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Greater than, the best mistake I ever made." And when little Lily ran up, wrapping her arms around both of them, Isabella finally felt something she'd been searching for all her life. Not power, not perfection, but home. But for that one night, none of it mattered. For one night, she wasn't the lonely CEO, and he wasn't the struggling father. They were just two souls, meeting by accident, destined to crash into something neither of them saw coming.